"Your approach is outdated and slowing us down," he said, his eyes flicking past me to the dusty diploma on the wall. "This hospital needs forward-thinking solutions." My name is Raymond Caldwell, I'm 58 years old, and just 10 minutes ago, I was dismissed from my role as Senior Systems Administrator at St. James Medical Center in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. 15 years spent safeguarding the digital pulse of a 300-bed hospital erased in less than half an hour. Scott sat comfortably behind what had once been Dr. Lawrence's desk. At 42, armed with an MBA but no medical experience, he had been in charge for barely 4 months and was already making cuts. His consultant, Austin, leaned casually by the window, glued to his phone, probably updating his resume before I even stepped outside. "The consulting team will be overseeing the transition to cloud-based architecture," Scott continued. "We've prepared a severance package. 2 months' salary. Standard non-disclosure agreement." I nodded, feeling the weight of the ID badge against my chest. 15 years, and not once had a single system crashed during my watch. Not during the ransomware scare of 2018, not during the power grid failure of 2020, not even during the budget cuts when I lost half my staff and kept things running by working 80-hour weeks. "The security team will escort you to collect your personal items," Scott said, sliding a folder across the desk. "We'll need your access card and credentials." I unclipped my badge and placed it on the desk. "The master passwords are in the secure drive. All properly documented." "Excellent," Scott smiled for the first time. "I'm glad you're being reasonable about this, Raymond. Change is difficult, but necessary." I looked at Austin, maybe 30 years old, already stepping forward to claim my chair. He hadn't once asked me a single question about our systems during his 3-week evaluation. "Is there something else?" Scott asked. I should have told him about the custom patches ID created. I should have mentioned the integration between the legacy pharmacy system and the patient records. I should have warned him about the specialized backup protocols. Instead, I said, "No. Nothing else." I walked out with the security guard, past the nurses who'd called me at 3 a.m. when systems glitched, past the surgical scheduling desk where ID personally rebuilt the database after a corruption. 15 years of quiet, reliable service. In the parking lot, I slid into my truck, placed my cardboard box of family photos and coffee mugs on the passenger seat, and drove away without looking back. They didn't want my expertise. They wanted my absence. It would be exactly 1 week before they realized what they'd lost. I started at St. James right after my 43th birthday. Transitioning from private tech to healthcare wasn't my plan, but the economy tanked and Diane's cancer treatments weren't cheap. The hospital offered stability and decent insurance, so I took the job and learned medical systems from scratch. Those first years I worked alongside Dr. Lawrence, the old director. He understood what mattered. "Fancy dashboards don't save lives, Raymond," he'd say. "Reliability does." So I built reliable systems, redundant backups, fail-safes, manual overrides when necessary. Not pretty, but bulletproof. I skipped vacations when the electronic prescribing platform needed upgrading, missed my daughter Rachel's college graduation to handle an emergency server migration. Diane understood. "You're keeping people alive," she'd say, "before the cancer took her 8 years ago." The hospital became my life. The staff became my family. Nurse Hayes in oncology, who always brought me coffee when system updates ran late, Dr. Andrew in cardiology, who'd stop by with donuts on mornings after ID fixed a critical issue, even the janitor Gloria, who'd keep me company during overnight maintenance windows. Things changed when Dr. Lawrence retired last winter. The board brought in Scott from some fancy hospital network in Chicago. First thing he did was schedule an efficiency audit. I noticed the cracks immediately. Scott never attended the IT briefings, never asked about our system architecture, just nodded impatiently during meetings, checking his watch. Then came Austin and his team of consultants with their matching polo shirts and buzzwords: digital transformation, cloud migration, system modernization. I tried explaining our specialized setup. The patient record system interfaces with 17 different platforms, I told them. Some commercial, some custom-built. We've had to create specialized. We've handled dozens of hospital migrations, Austin interrupted. It's all standard stuff. The warning signs kept flashing. Charts mapping our systems appeared on conference room walls, but they missed entire sections of infrastructure. Questions about critical connections went unanswered. My emails outlining security protocols received polite thank yous but no follow-up questions. One Friday, I found contractors measuring my office. Just planning the renovations, the contractor said, not meeting my eyes. I went home and updated my resume that night. Something told me to prepare, but part of me couldn't believe they'd remove the one person who understood how every piece fit together. I was wrong. They didn't just want a new system, they wanted a new story, one without the old guy who kept reminding them of the risks. The truth hit me 2 days after the firing, sitting in my living room surrounded by classified job listings and half-eaten takeout. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing with messages from hospital staff. "What's the backup process for surgical scheduling again?" Texted Alan from IT. "Where's the configuration for the pharmacy interface?" Asked Denise, the database admin. I didn't answer. My termination agreement was clear: no unauthorized assistance. The realization wasn't satisfaction or relief, it was a cold, heavy certainty. They had no idea what they'd done. Our hospital systems weren't just software you could swap out like changing a light bulb. They were living, interconnected organisms ID cultivated for 15 years, custom interfaces between incompatible vendor platforms, workarounds for regulatory requirements, manual processes where automation failed. I documented everything, of course, hundreds of pages of technical specifications, configuration notes, emergency procedures, all filed properly on the secure drive. But documentation couldn't replace understanding. Couldn't replace 15 years of institutional knowledge. Couldn't replace me. My phone rang, Scott's number. I let it go to voicemail. "Raymond, we're having some integration issues with the pharmacy system, just a quick question. Call me back." I deleted the message and poured another cup of coffee. 3 more calls came through that day, each voicemail more urgent than the last. I deleted them all. That evening, Dr. Andrew called from his personal phone. "Raymond, did you hear what happened today? Emergency department couldn't access patient history for a trauma case, had to call previous hospitals directly. Took 40 minutes to get medication allergies." I closed my eyes. "No one was hurt." "Not this time," he said. "But Scott's new team is struggling. They're talking about rolling back to paper records temporarily." I felt a strange stillness settle over me. Not revenge. Not satisfaction. Just clarity. For 15 years I'd been invisible when things worked perfectly. My sleepless nights, missed family events, and constant vigilance meant the hospital ran smoothly, that doctors could treat patients, that nurses could administer the right medications, that lives could be saved. All that mattered was keeping the system alive. And now the system was failing. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said carefully. "Scott's been asking if anyone has your personal contact information," Dr. Andrew continued. "The consultant team seems overwhelmed." I thought about the specialized backup server hidden behind a maintenance panel in the server room. About the paper documentation in the fire safe in my old office. About the authentication chains that would start expiring in exactly 12 days without manual renewal. "I wish them luck," I said. After hanging up, I walked to my desk and pulled out a business card I'd been holding onto for years. Kimberly, Director of Technology at Riverside Medical Center. She'd tried recruiting me 3 times over the years. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted to be somewhere my experience was valued. I picked up the phone and dialed. Monday morning my email inbox exploded. 17 messages from Scott, each with increasingly desperate subject lines. Quick question about patient database, urgent, cardiology system failure, critical need, emergency assistance. I read them all but responded to none. My severance agreement didn't obligate me to fix their mess. The last email finally dropped all pretense. "Raymond, name your consultant rate. Whatever you want. We need you back ASAP." I was halfway through composing a very professional decline when my doorbell rang. Scott stood on my porch, tie askew, eyes bloodshot. "Raymond," he said, forcing a smile. "Thanks for seeing me. Can we talk?" I let him in, offered coffee, and waited. "We've hit some unexpected complications with the system transition," he began, clutching his mug. "Austin's team is working around the clock, but there are aspects of your architecture that are proving challenging to navigate. I nodded. I documented everything thoroughly. Yes, the documentation is there, but, he leaned forward. Some of these customizations, these interconnections between systems, they're quite unique. Translation, they couldn't make sense of 15 years of specialized work in 5 days. Yesterday oncology lost access to treatment protocols for 6 hours, Scott continued. The day before, billing and insurance verification went down completely. We're facing serious compliance issues, potential patient safety concerns. I sipped my coffee. Sounds like the modernization is going well. His face tightened. Raymond, I'm prepared to offer you a 6-month contract as implementation consultant, double your previous salary. We need you to help with the transition. The offer was almost insulting. After firing me, he expected me to come back and train my replacements properly. I'm afraid I've already accepted another position, I said. Scott's coffee mug froze halfway to his lips. Another? Where? Riverside Medical Center. Riverside? But they're our direct competitor. Yes. Scott set down his mug. Raymond, be reasonable. You built these systems. You know them better than anyone. We're talking about patient care. That stung, because it was meant to. 15 years ID put patient care above everything, my family, my health, my life. I agree, I said carefully. Patient care is paramount. That's why I recommended against rushing a system migration without proper transition planning. I believe that email is included in my documentation. Scott's face flushed. The board wanted immediate action. Modernization is necessary for our long term. I start at Riverside next Monday, I interrupted. I wish you and your team the best of luck. He stood up, desperation replaced by anger. Your severance package includes a non-compete clause. You can't work for a competitor for 6 months. I smiled for the first time. Actually, it doesn't. I had my lawyer review it before signing. There's a non-disclosure agreement, but no non-compete. I'm free to work wherever I choose. His expression darkened. This is about revenge, isn't it? Making us suffer because I let you go. I walked to the door and opened it. This is about finding somewhere that values 15 years of expertise instead of dismissing it as outdated and inefficient. Good luck with your modernization, Director Winters. After he left, I sat down and finished my coffee. I didn't feel triumphant or vindictive. Just tired and a little sad. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Andrew, administration in full panic mode. 3 departments down. Board emergency meeting called. I didn't reply. But I saved the message not as a trophy, but as a reminder of what happens when experience is treated as obsolete. By Thursday, the local news had caught the story. System failures plague St. James Medical Center. Patient care affected, the anchor reported. I watched from my living room as a reporter stood outside the hospital where ID spent 15 years. Sources inside St. James confirm that multiple departments have experienced technology failures following a recent IT leadership change. The hospital has been forced to implement emergency paper protocols while experts work to restore critical systems. My phone rang. Kimberly from Riverside. Seeing the news about St. James, she said. You doing okay? I'm fine, I replied. Looking forward to starting Monday. About that, Kimberly said. I just got a very interesting call from someone on St. James board, Dr. Caroline. I remembered her, head of surgery. One of the few board members who actually understood what my team did. What did she want? To verify you'd accepted our offer, Kimberly said, and to tell me some interesting things about the situation at St. James. I sat up straighter. What things? Apparently Director Winters didn't just decide to replace you on a whim. He's been working with Helix Solutions Group for months. The name hit like a punch. Helix Solutions was a healthcare technology company known for taking over hospital IT operations and then raising prices once systems were dependent on their proprietary platforms. Scott brought in their consultants as part of a larger deal, Kimberly continued. Helix offered significant upfront savings to the board if St. James converted to their platform. Scott would get a performance bonus for cost reduction. The pieces clicked into place. My firing wasn't about modernization. It was about clearing the path for a corporate takeover of our systems. The board didn't fully understand the technical implications, Kimberly added. They trusted Scott's assessment that transitioning would be seamless. I thought about the specialized systems ID built systems that prioritized patient care over corporate efficiency. Systems built to serve doctors and nurses, not billing departments. How bad is it really? I asked. Kimberly paused. Dr. Caroline said they've had to divert emergency patients to other hospitals. Critical care units are on manual protocols. The state compliance office is investigating. I closed my eyes. This wasn't what I wanted. I never wanted patients to suffer. There's more, Kimberly said. Dr. Caroline mentioned that before presenting the Helix proposal, Scott had all department heads sign off on a technology assessment. The assessment claimed that your systems were obsolete, non-compliant, and at high risk of failure. That's not true, I said, anger finally breaking through. We passed every compliance audit. Had 99.98% uptime last year. Dr. Caroline knows that now. The board is realizing they were misled. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and found an email from Dr. Caroline herself, sent an hour earlier. Raymond, I owe you an apology. The board approved Scott's IT restructuring based on incomplete and misleading information. We've since learned that the outdated systems you maintained were in fact exceeding all industry benchmarks for reliability and security. Scott and Helix presented us with false comparisons and manipulated performance metrics to justify the change. The situation has grown serious enough that we've called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. I'd like to invite you to attend and share your perspective. No obligation, but many of us would appreciate hearing directly from you. Regardless of what you decide, I want you to know that many of us now understand the disservice that was done to you and to our hospital. Sincerely, Dr. Caroline. I sat back, letting the truth settle around me. This wasn't just about firing a loyal employee. It was about deliberately dismantling a working system for profit. I arrived at the hospital boardroom Friday morning, exactly 15 minutes early, the same way ID arrived for every meeting during my 15 years of employment. Several board members were already there, including Dr. Caroline, who greeted me with a handshake and a grateful nod. "Thank you for coming, Raymond," she said. "I wasn't sure you would." "Neither was I admitted. The room filled quickly, department heads, administrators, doctors ID worked with for years. Scott arrived last, stopping short when he saw me sitting at the table. Austin trailed behind him, looking considerably less confident than the day I was fired. Dr. Caroline called the meeting to order. "We are here to address the ongoing system failures and to reassess our relationship with Helix Solutions." She turned to me. "Mr. Caldwell has graciously agreed to provide his assessment of the situation." All eyes turned to me. For 15 years ID worked quietly behind the scenes, solving problems without recognition. Now I was center stage. The systems at St. James were built over 15 years to meet specific needs, I began. Every customization, every interface was created to solve a real problem faced by medical staff. These weren't outdated systems. They were specialized tools. I opened my laptop and connected it to the projector. On screen appeared the documentation ID meticulously maintained, hundreds of pages detailing every aspect of the hospital's digital infrastructure. "Everything needed to maintain these systems is here," I said. "Complete documentation, contingency procedures, security protocols. The problem isn't the documentation. The problem is that Helix's platform isn't compatible with the specialized systems this hospital relies on." Scott interrupted. "The compatibility issues are temporary. Helix has successfully implemented their solutions in dozens of hospitals." I pulled up my second document, a detailed comparison ID prepared overnight. "These are the hospitals where Helix has implemented their platform. Notice anything?" Dr. Andrew leaned forward. "They're all new facilities. Or recent builds." "Exactly," I said. "Helix works well in hospitals built from the ground up on their platform. But retrofitting their system onto established hospitals with legacy requirements, that's where they struggle." I turned to face Scott directly. "Which Helix knew before they came here? Their own technical specifications, which I've highlighted, show the incompatibilities with our pharmacy and radiology systems." The board members exchanged glances. Dr. Caroline turned to Scott. "Did you know about these incompatibilities when you recommended Helix?" Scott's confidence faltered. The assessment indicated that any transition challenges would be minimal. And the assessment you personally oversaw, I interrupted, pulling up an email ID received from a former colleague. The same assessment where you directed staff to emphasize system vulnerabilities and minimize stability metrics. The room grew silent. I hadn't come for revenge. But I had come for truth. The fact is, I continued, St. James can't function on Helix's platform without sacrificing the specialized workflows that make this hospital exceptional. Not without years of careful transition planning. Dr. Caroline looked at her colleagues. I believe we've heard enough to make an informed decision. Scott stood up. You can't seriously be considering abandoning modernization based on the opinion of a disgruntled ex-employee. Dr. Andrews spoke up. We've diverted 67 emergency patients in the past week. 3 surgeries were delayed. Medication administration errors increased 12%. Those aren't opinions, Director Winters. Those are facts. The board voted 20 minutes later. The Helix contract would be terminated immediately. An emergency restoration plan would be implemented to return to the previous systems. As I packed up my laptop, Dr. Caroline approached me. The board has another proposition for you, Raymond, if you're willing to hear it. I glanced at Scott, standing defeated by the door. I'm listening, I said. 3 weeks later, I walked through the hospital's main entrance wearing a new ID badge, Raymond Caldwell, Chief Technology Officer. The turnaround hadn't been easy. The Helix team had made significant changes before departing, some of which had corrupted key databases. My new team, a mix of former colleagues and fresh talent, had worked around the clock restoring systems, rebuilding interfaces, and recovering data. Scott was gone, pursuing other opportunities according to the official announcement. I hadn't asked for his removal, but I wasn't sorry to see him go. I stopped by the nurses' station in cardiology, where Nurse Hayes broke into a smile. Systems are running smooth as silk again, she said. Patient records loading in under 2 seconds. Good to hear, I replied. Any other issues? Not since you came back. Night and day difference. As I continued my rounds, Dr. Andrew fell in step beside me. Heading to the board meeting? I nodded. Quarterly technology review. First one with me at the big table instead of standing in the corner with a slideshow. We entered the boardroom, where the hospital leadership was gathering. Dr. Caroline, now interim director, nodded to me. Mr. Caldwell, we're eager to hear your department's report. I connected my laptop to the projector. On screen appeared a simple dashboard showing system performance, uptime statistics, and comparison metrics from before and after the Helix debacle. Recovery is complete, I stated. All systems restored with no data loss. We've implemented additional safeguards against similar disruptions in the future. Dr. Caroline studied the metrics. And the modernization initiatives Director Winters was so concerned about? I changed slides to show my 5-year technology roadmap, a careful, methodical plan for evolving our systems without compromising patient care. Real modernization, I said, doesn't replace what works. It builds on it. The board unanimously approved the plan. 6 months later, I sat on my back deck with a cup of coffee, watching the sunset. My phone buzzed with a text from Kimberly at Riverside. Heard St. James received the Regional Excellence in Healthcare Technology Award. Congratulations, almost colleague. I smiled and typed back, thanks. Sorry for the last-minute career change. No hard feelings. You were where you needed to be, she replied. She was right. I belonged at St. James, though not in the same invisible role I'd occupied for 15 years. As CTO, I now had a voice in decisions that affected patient care. I had a seat at the table where I could defend the systems that mattered. The hospital had learned its lesson the hard way. Experience couldn't be replaced with buzzwords. Loyalty couldn't be discounted as outdated. I scrolled through my camera roll to a photo taken at last week's staff appreciation dinner, my team standing together, a mix of veterans and newcomers, each bringing valuable perspectives. The plaque on the table recognized our department's contribution to patient care. In the 15 years before my firing, I'd never once been publicly acknowledged for keeping the hospital running. Now my expertise was visible, respected, valued. I thought about Scott occasionally, wondering if he'd learned anything from the experience. Last I heard, he'd taken a position at a healthcare startup promising revolutionary disruption of hospital administration. Some lessons are harder to learn than others. My new ID badge sat on the table beside me. I picked it up, running my thumb across the title, Chief Technology Officer. Not just the man who kept the lights on anymore. The man who helped guide the hospital's future. I hadn't wanted revenge. ID wanted recognition not of my ego, but of the truth, that experience matters. That some things can't be replaced or repackaged or disrupted without consequences. Sometimes the most innovative approach is simply respecting what already works. My name is Raymond Caldwell. For 15 years I've kept the systems that make this hospital tick. I've been pushed aside as old-fashioned, but in the end everyone saw that without experience, no system survives. Now I want to ask you, what do you think is really important? Brilliant new ideas or reliability built on years of experience?